Bro, I'm here.
All right. So Shawn will be presenting in English, and I will be reading his bio before. Shawn Faculty of Social Science and Humanity in University Malaysia Sabah, whose passion for education issues of statelessness has brought to the writing of his thesis. During his university years, he was involved in organizations, specifically Teach for Malaysia and Leeds Buyer Academy. Okay, Shawn, maybe before you can start about explaining, maybe you can start by explaining about what is the definition of statelessness. And of course, not many Indonesians know about the issue of statelessness. So, to Shawn, the stage is yours.
Right, thanks, Isan. My internet connection is like pretty unstable today, so if I go off, I'm sorry about it. And if I lag, just let me know in the comment section so that I can switch off my video, right? So that we can have like a smooth flow of the whole event, right? Right, thanks once again for this opportunity, and it's good to see like some of my classmates here also, right? Really good presentation just now, Shafika, and so I was having a chat with Ihsan like a few days back, and he said that this topic is something new to most Indonesians as compared to Malaysians. But even so, me as a Malaysian, this topic was very new to me, and I only got to know about what stateless was when I went to Sabah in 2017 for my undergrad studies, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this topic, because like I'm very passionate about education in Malaysia, and when I saw like a few children who was not able to attain education, it really got my interest to actually dive deeper and to know more like why these children do not have opportunity just like the rest of us. Okay, can I go on to the next slide, please? Thanks. Right. The access to education is like a fundamental right enshrined in the UDHR and also in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Right. So, however, if you look into the context of Malaysia, Malaysia acceded to the convention, but just on it has entered a reservation on the in Article 28 of the CRC lah. Um, and in 2002, what happened was like there was an amendment into the Education Act, and it ruled that every child who is to enter Malaysian public schools must present a birth certificate. And this was like a huge problem, whereby a lot of refugee children, migrant children, and also undocumented children found it hard to actually get into public schools. Because in Malaysia, the context of schooling in Malaysia, we have public schools, private schools, sekolah agama, and we have like small kindergartens run by like individuals, which is also considered as private education. But public schools is free for all Malaysian children, right? Before 2002, it was free for all. That means everyone can come in, and also this includes migrant children. They could get basic education, meaning to say from levels or from grade 1 to grade 5. But after 2002, because you need to present a birth certificate, so refugee children and migrant children, who are most of whom undocumented, they don't have a birth certificate, they could not enter public schools, right? And private education is like really out of reach, even for most of us who are Malaysians. It's really out of reach because the price of to get into a private school is like really high. It can come up to 15,000 for a semester, right? So that is the cost of private education in Malaysia, be it primary or secondary. So this caused like a problem for migrant children who cannot attain education. So next slide, please. Okay, so in the context of Sabah, most of undocumented or stateless persons comprise of the Filipinos. So what happened was in the 1970s, there was an insurgency or war broke out in southern Philippines. So this these people were refugees who came to Sabah seeking refuge and for safety of themselves and also their family. So at the time, they were welcomed into the state and they were given settlements as well. So because they were refugees, they're trying to get to safety and all that. So they wanted a place lah. So if you can see that along the lines, a lot of problems came about because when when these people are here, they are not allowed to actually get married to locals lah. And but it happened lah. They found locals and they got married locals, and this posed a different problems and they started a family. And then in the 1980s, we had economic migrants, meaning to say people who came in and worked as plantation workers, right? So one of the reasons because they were very cheap in labor, so they were brought in illegally lah. So they came in illegally, or probably they came in legally, but they failed to renew their passports and documents, and they overstayed here for so many years, and then they started their families, and then this caused like a generational problem, uh, which we see today lah, undocumented and statelessness in the context of Sabah. So we could categorize like undocumented children into four categories. One is like children born to whose parents are both Filipinos, right? That means that the parents do not hold a Malaysian identity card or Filipino passport, or the passport already expired and they fail to renew. Right? This is like a common scenario lah, like in the context of Sabah. All right. But if you were to ask them, they would somehow disclose the fact that they were previously Filipino, or they had entered Malaysian waters through illegal methods out of fear that they may be detained, or you may be a police like trying to get information out of them. All right. And then there are children who are born to second generation immigrants. Right. So children who are born to parents who were IMM 13 holders. So these IMM 13 holders are those refugees who fled the insurgency in Philippines and they came to Sabah. So they were given a special pass called IMM 13. So if you hold this pass, meaning to say that you're a refugee, and you can renew this pass on a yearly basis with a price of RM90. Yes, RM90, right? So many of them fail to renew this pass, meaning to say that each person in a household, let's say you have like 4 members of a household, a husband, a wife, and 2 children, each person has to pay 90 ringgit to actually renew this IMM 13 document. So many of them do not have like proper jobs, unstable jobs. They are somewhat illegal there in a way. They tend not to renew their pass and they overstay, and then that's how they become illegal, from having a legal status to illegal status, right? And then the children born to them also become illegal because they fail to renew a document, right? And then we have children whose one parent is also a Malaysian citizen, and because these people, they live in the interiors, they do not know how to register their child after birth, and this comes as another problem as well, right? And then there were also children who were left behind in Sabah when their parents were deported. So raids usually happen in the perkampungans or the villages of these stateless people. Sometimes they have their own settlements. So when raids happen, meaning to say when the authorities come in to check your documents, those without documents will actually leave their children with a neighbor or family member, or just leave the children somewhere, and they will just run away somewhere else for safety, right? So what has this caused in Sabah is that there's a lot of child laborers and also street children. So if you have been to Sabah, you would see children actually selling plastic bags at the markets. They would be selling fruits. They would be selling cigarettes. They'll be selling drugs. And also some, if you go into dark alleys at night, you can see them sniffing glue. So living in poverty and having scarce resources actually is a factor to why these children tend to sell drugs, get into all these kinds of activities, because like they're just there to survive, right? And my hypothesis was that one way that we can solve this problem is that creating access to education for these children. I mean, every child deserves the right to education, regardless whether you're undocumented, you're documented, or wherever you are. Education is an indispensable right. That means you cannot give and take in it. Like, it should be for everyone, right? So, and that's when, can I go to the next slide, please? So that's when I got to know that despite the public schools rejecting this community and private education is out of context for them, I come to learn that in Sabah, interestingly, there are a lot of individuals, non-government organizations, and also a small number of some local authorities had set up community learning centers, or they call it alternative learning center. So the very existence or the idea of an alternative education is not like the schools that we've been to, right? But the idea of alternative education is
Sepertinya kita terputus dari
right. So
saudara.
sorry, I'm back.
Okay, we can continue, right?
Right, so sorry.
All right, we can continue.
Okay, where was
Please.
I? Oh yeah, alternative education. Right. So the idea of alternative education is to just fill these gaps for education and to provide access to education to those who are marginalized or those who could not attain education. So that is the idea. It's not only happening in Malaysia, but the idea of alternative education is worldwide. Meaning to say, we are bringing the opportunity or access to education to people who cannot reach it. Okay, so next slide. Next slide, please. Right. Sorry again, I got disconnected.
It's
Okay,
fine.
so
Yes, you can continue.
yeah. So so when I was in yes, this slide, thanks. So when I was in Sabah, like I said, I come to understand that there are individuals, NGOs, and a small portion of authorities who have set up like alternative learning centers or community schools just to cater education and give access to um, children who are marginalized. So one of an ALC, which me and some of my friends, I think some of my friends who are involved are present here as well. After my presentation, I'll just introduce you to them. Right, they have done really good work with the school as well. So what happened here was like in 2005, Yaya Yaakob, who's the founder of this community school called Madrasag, or the school for the stateless and marginalized, while sending his domestic worker to back home, he found that children were loitering in the streets, just like how I did when I first came to Sabah. And he questioned like, why are these children on the streets running around and not being in school, where they're supposed to be on a daily basis? And he got to know that they are undocumented, they don't have proper documents to get into schools. So he took the initiative to gather the community around and to actually share the idea of opening up a community school for them, right? A community school so that marginalized children could have access to education as well. So there are three reasons why children of migrants find it hard to access education in public schools, right? I said before, they have no formal legal identification papers and they come from impoverished backgrounds, right? So in Madrasag Hikmah, it's like the most chosen school among all other ALCs in Kota Kinabalu because it has one of the cheapest fees, which is 20 ringgit per student per month, right? So they're self-sustained. They don't have any support from any government agencies or ministries. They just run on a daily basis. I mean, through donations, through the school fees, and some people who just come in to help, like volunteers and all that, lah. All right, and they just aim to provide the basic human right to education for the marginalized, so that these children can gain basic literacy and also numeracy skills to survive. Because in the context of learning while we are 3, right, until when we die, all right, we literacy and numeracy is like something it's a very fundamental thing for us to be equipped with, so that we can at least know how, which will help us to survive later on. All right, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so the idea of Madrasah Hikmah is actually they want to provide the provide basic education. The previous slide, please. And the slide before this. This is forward already. Backwards a bit. Okay, yes, this is the one. Thanks. Right. So the very idea of right, the previous slide, sebelum ini. Next. Right. So as I said, like the very existence of Madrasah Hikmah is like they want to provide the basic right to education for these children. And like I said, reading, writing, numeracy skills very important, because we are equipping them with the basic fundamental skills, which will enable them to survive once they leave school to actually get jobs. Because these children, they cannot aim higher than what we can desire. I mean, although they have dreams and just like normal children, but it would be something which I wish to see, that these children can have the opportunity to get into universities and then later on become doctors, lawyers, and so on and so forth. But the current situation in Malaysia does not allow for these children to get to that level, level of dreaming to go into university. However, efforts are being made by people on grounds. Like constantly, they're fighting for the rights of this community as well. Hopefully, one day we will have these marginalized children into schools, getting access to university, and then becoming doctors, lawyers, what you can imagine. And also they provide advisory and guidance services. So many of these children, sometimes they get detained, they get questioned, and then they get brought to the police station, they get brought to detention centers, and then sometimes the family comes and then seek for guidance and counsel. So they also have a lawyer who in their board of committees, who often go and help solve and resolve all these issues with the authorities when these things happen. All right, and then since it's established for the community, what Mr. Yaya told me is that he wants the school to be a community school. So every now and then they try to get the parents involved as much as possible, so that they know what's happening, and so that they can build a trust between the parents and the school, because most of whom who are working there are mostly local Sabahans, and they're catering for Filipino migrant children. Right, so it's not easy actually if that to gain trust of someone. I mean, it happens between us in normal relations as well, but over time, I think parents are playing their part as well in the school. They come in to help in like gotong royong activities, and also they help clean up the school, and they have like sports day, graduation ceremonies, and all that. So the parents play an important part of the whole school, right? So next slide. Okay, so the school has like 3 administrators, six full-time teachers, and 626 students, which is the highest number an ALC can have. I think is this the quorum is the largest in the whole of Sabah, right? With 10 active volunteers. So subject slots are Bahasa Melayu, English, Mathematics, Science, Islamic Studies, Mandarin, and English for communication, conducted by volunteers. So the very idea of equipping stateless children with the language skills is so that once when they leave school at the age of 12, 13, or 14, all right, and they don't wish to continue further in their education, with the existing language skills that they have, they could actually find jobs. For example, becoming tourist guides. I think there's a recent viral video that a Cambodian kid who was well versed in so many dialects and also languages was able to speak, and he actually wowed a lot of tourists. So um, equipping them with language skills is like one important factor, because like Sabah is like a tourist hub. A lot of tourists come in day in day out. So having the ability to communicate in different languages actually equip them to be more employable lah. So the idea of them to get a job is actually more of a survival than to develop lah, because they need to support and sustain their families, which in some families they have like 5, 6, 7 children, and parents are just working odd jobs where income levels are like sometimes below 2,000, which is really hard to maintain, right? So most of these children, they actually sometimes in certain cases they drop out of school so that they could go and then take care of their families. So giving them the skills is like very important lah. Like I said, the basic 4: numeracy, reading, writing, and also calculating lah. All right, so next slide. Okay, so like you can see, like the school has like so many outdoor activities, like parents come and get involved. It's like the graduation ceremony like last year. So a lot of people just come in, and then they have workshops day to day. So the idea of Madrasag Hikmah as an ALC is just like to give the very same schooling experience to marginalized children, so that they don't get left behind. Next slide. Right, so often they have like meetings between the school staff and parents, and then yeah, next slide. Right, so one of the challenges like Madrasag Hikmah face as an ALC, or many other ALCs face, is like the facilities there are like far from complete, right? So we don't get like this kind of classroom setting in normal government schools, right? To those Malaysians who've been in the government school, and I'm pretty sure even in Indonesia you don't get like this classroom setting. The tables are like very shaky. I think Isan can vouch for that. Isan has been teaching in the school as well. He's one of the volunteers. The whiteboards are like sometimes it's hard to rub, and then it's an open space, and then like yeah, facilities are like really far from complete, and it get cramped up like most times. So we have like classes outside on some days when we have like large classes, right? They have like lack of books for learning. They don't even have like a proper syllabus. It's just like whoever teaches them with their own knowledge and their own skills, they just come up with like their own self-curated syllabus, and then they just teach the children there. And they don't have like a standardized textbook, just like how the Malaysian education is. All right. So Malaysia, Madrasag Hikmah is actually listed as a private education institution. So they would not be supported by the government at all. All right. So yeah, next slide. Right. So yeah, this is like one common problem that the school faces, like from the education department. So last year, an officer came down and said like, you're not fit to run a school because you don't have like qualified teachers, you don't have like standardized textbooks. You're just there. This often happens because of bureaucratic reasons lah. So and sometimes they also face problems with the immigration police because it's a very sensitive issue. Statelessness is a very sensitive issue in the context of Sabah. Not many people would really like you to go and help this community lah. Some face like some people would applaud you, some people would like reject the idea of like really helping them because they term them as illegals, and no one should really help them. You should turn them away, you should deport them somewhere else. So these are like some of the mixed reactions we got. So in 2019, just last year, the school got an eviction notice. So they have to move from the current place. And currently the school is like finding a new place to like set up new school for these children lah. Next slide. Okay, so however, despite the challenges that they face, they still have like initiatives, assistance by the teachers working there, individuals from outside, volunteers, agencies, right? So every year the zakat assistance comes in by the mosque around the neighborhood, and then we have like individuals who come in to help play their role. Like during the MCO, during the lockdown, we had like this like the picture from the lockdown, the first picture. So a lot of companies and they just came in to donate to the school, like basic necessities, because during MCO a lot of families lost their job, and being marginalized is another challenge. They can't even get like jobs, so they need like basic necessities to sustain and survive. So people just come in to help. Then we have like volunteers, and so this is a picture of a volunteer from UMS who's our classmate as well. Tashish is teaching Mandarin to some of the children, and then we had like a small gathering last year with the children as well. Right, next picture. All right, so this is like a short video, a 2-minute video. I just want everyone to see like what these children experience, what marginalized children experience in, yeah. Display, yeah, thank you.
Unfortunately, the media related to this video is not found. Therefore, I cannot play it. I'm sorry.
Oh, serious? If you don't mind allowing me to share screen.
Yes, you're allowed to do so.
Okay, thank you.
I live in Kampung Likas. I am 15 years old.
Hello, my name is Sabah-Universitas. I am 15 years old. I live in Kampung Likas.
Nama saya Zualiza binti Nur Hakim. Umur saya 15 tahun. Saya tinggal di Sepanggar.
Oke, hai, saya Abdulsyah bin Said. Saya berumur 14 tahun. Saya tinggal di Kampung Likas.
Halo, nama saya Farina. Saya berumur 11 tahun. Saya tinggal di Kampung Likas. Cita-cita saya ingin menjadi usaha. Cita-cita saya ingin menjadi guru.
Apa cita-cita Pak?
Cita-cita saya menjadi seorang
gembira karena sekolah di sini, bersyukur karena sekolah ini adalah bagi saya cuma sekolah di sini saja yang mampu menerima kami yang tidak mempunyai dokumen. Sedih lah sebab tidak dapat PSA, tidak dapat SPM macam orang lain. Jadi sebab bagi orang lain lah begitu dengan SPM ini orang bagi senang dapat kerja. Tapi okey lah, bersyukur juga dapat sekolah di sini sebab dapat sekurang-kurangnya dapat membaca, dapat memahami, jadi tidaklah senang dibodoh oleh orang.
Mula-mula saya sedih bilang, oh budak lain dapat belajar dekat kerajaan, tapi saya tidak. Saya okey, tapi at least saya bilang saya dapat belajar juga lah, saya dapat juga membaca, dapat menulis, dapat.
sedih lah sebab orang belajar lebih tinggi SPM, tapi saya tidak boleh belajar apa aja. Tapi yang penting saya dapat juga belajar sesuatu yang baru. Yang penting saya dapat belajar. Perasaan saya happy lah, biarpun sekolah ini macam tak berapa lengkap, tapi saya tetap happy dapat belajar sesuatu yang baru seperti membaca.
Education.
Right. Yeah. So Yeah, so I think you've seen like from the video just now that these children too have like dreams. They want to reach far, just like all of us. Like when we were a child, we have dreams of becoming doctors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, and like we dream like so much. Like these children should not be restricted from dreaming just because like they're undocumented. They don't have a document or they're termed illegal. Okay, this a term which I don't wish to use, but they're termed illegal and neglected and marginalized by society. So some of them really feel like there's no one there to help us. But giving them, like you can see the enthusiasm. I think Isan and all the other volunteers here who have taught in this school can actually vouch for that, saying that they're very enthusiastic into learning something new. And if you just give them the opportunity, like everyone else, they too can go far in life. So I reiterate my statement just now and my hypothesis just now that education is an indispensable right to, and it should be for everyone lah. Like doesn't mean that you're marginalized, you're from a different background, you should not have the access to attain like education. So one of like my recommendations that I would suggest for anyone who wish to like study statelessness and also undocumented children in the context of like wherever is it, right, be it in Indonesia or in Malaysia, right. One thing that I found out is that the Filipinos are like actually white. Their whole community structure is white. They have the Siluks, the Bajau Lauts, and they have many other sects. But more people have done comparative research with the Bajau Lauts compared to the Suluk undocumented community. So I feel that there's more research to be done in this area. And if let's say your research, like you're planning to do a research involving marginalized communities, it's best that you go onto grounds so that you will have a better understanding. Because like this whole research that I've done, like it was like A to Z, like from fieldwork. I've read a bit of theory and also like from past studies, but whatever was written in my whole thesis was just based on my fieldwork interviews by the actual community itself, because I get to experience like how they live. I get to hear actual stories, and also I get to know like what life is from their end. Because like just reading about stateless and marginalized community is not enough. It's best that you go down to grounds and understand where they're coming from, because there are lots of stories which is untold, and there are lots of biasness in some stories. I mean, in some bureaucratic structures as well. All right. So and also it's one thing which is like very hard is that building rapport and gaining trust of the community. So I and another friend was like one of their first non-native teacher. So it took some time for us to actually build trust with this community or these children, because I know it happens to all of us. Like suddenly some alien person comes into your classroom and say like, "Hey, I'm your teacher. I'm going to work with you for next 1 year." So I know it's going to be very uncomfortable at first, but as time goes, when you build that trust with these children, helps you um, it helps you get closer to them, and also you get a lot of understanding between you and your students as well. Even after I've left volunteering, like for a few months now, they still contact me, they still keep in touch with me. So this like something I really cherish out of this whole research experience. I don't call this a research experience, but it's just a whole experience by itself. All right. And for Malaysians, I think that policies need to be reviewed and better ones should come in place. Right. I also got to know that in Malaysia, this is something for my Indonesian friends over there. In Malaysia, the state of Sabah and Sarawak is a bit different from the peninsula, because Sabah and Sarawak joined the federation in 1963, right? So Malaya gained independence in 1957. So there were only like a few states in the peninsula. So Sabah and Sarawak were additional states who joined in 1963, but they have their own special jurisdiction on their immigration policies and a few other policies, right? Meaning to say that they have a say in constructing their own immigration policies. That is number one, and their own and some other policies for these two states. So they're a bit special in that context. However, there's no alignment between the federal government and also the state government. Meaning to say that there's so many agencies involved in the issue of statelessness. There are like lots of people playing their part in like trying to find a correct definition of stateless. There's no one definition of what statelessness is, even in a global context lah. There's no proper definition for what is statelessness. It varies with countries and also varies with governments and also varies with whoever is like authoritating that whole structure. But I've come to know that through a royal commission inquiry by the King of Malaysia and that whole royal commission inquiry, I found that a lot of authority within Malaysia itself, they do not know how to define what statelessness is, be it from the peninsula or in Sabah. There are lots of conflicting authorities, meaning to say there are two authorities governing one structure, meaning to say they are looking over statelessness, but they have two different definitions, they have two different SOPs, they have like so many different procedures. So we need an alignment to solve this issue lah. Like we cannot have like too many hits coming to solve one problem. We need just one. We need a proper alignment, a proper structure to actually monitor and solve this problem once and for all. Not to say to get rid of these people, but to come up with a proper solution so that they can get properly documented. They can be legal in a way. And so one, this is like on the context of statelessness. But when it comes to stateless children, one way to end up that these children do not get left behind is to actually give them the access to education. So once when they have the access to education, they can at least know what's right and wrong so that they don't get into drugs, they don't get into trafficking, they don't get into being street children, like how people term them. So they can just live a normal life and be with like so many, like just like us in community. So yeah, so if anyone who wish to like speak to me further about this topic, I'm really happy to like actually go deeper with this, deeper in this with you. I wish I had more time. There's lots of stories for me to tell you guys. Just a quick shout out. I know some of the volunteers are here as well. So I just want to call out Jagrup, Kelin, Darmen, Sawani, Tashisha, Ehsan himself, and also am I missing out anyone? Yeah, so I think these are like the volunteers who've been helping in Madrasag Hikmah for the past 1 year, right? Some of us, some of them are Sabahans, some of us are not from Sabahan, and we just came in to help, like to see and experience like what it's like being in the shoes of a stateless child. So we got to learn a lot, and I think this experience really shaped a lot of us, and we have like a different perspective from when we started until now, right? So thank you for this opportunity. So I'll stop sharing my screen now.